Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, Joe Biden's little stunt, Joe Biden's little gas tax gimmick, has already flopped. What another political miscalculation from this White House. The American people have a very simple message for Joe Biden and the Biden or the Brandon regime. Produce more oil. Stop talking about land leases and start talking about permits. Allow companies to drill more, actually make efforts to refine more crude. And probably most importantly, rescind your executive order that canceled the Keystone XL pipeline project. But instead, what has Joe Biden done? He released 1 day's worth of oil barrels from the Strategic Oil Reserve, something that's supposed to be kept for emergency use only, and now he's proposing a summer hiatus on the federal gas tax. An absolutely stupid idea that not only in the end wouldn't save Americans anything, but in the future would cause more financial problems not only for the American consumer but for the government as well. And so once again, the Biden regime decides to take a cheap, easy political route instead of actual concrete energy policy changes. And let's just say it's backfiring and backfiring bigly, as now even the president's own political party is going on the record trashing this guy and his gas tax gimmick. I've got some stuff to show you guys, so let's roll the tape. All right, friends, so Senator Joe Manchin, a man who deserves credit whether he's got a D next to his name or not, a man who single-handedly saved the American consumers from the Brandon regime's fiscal insanity. Well, he continues to do exactly that. Senator Joe Manchin goes on the record absolutely slamming Joe Biden's gas tax gimmick. His official answer, he's a no.
Biden will call on Congress to suspend the federal gas tax. Do you support that?
Let's look at basically where we are with the federal gas tax right now at 18 cents. 1993 is when it went to 18 cents. It started back in 1956, but it gradually got up to 18 cents. The average price of a gallon of gas in 1993 was $1.11. So we see proportionally. Now we're talking about $5 a gallon, and relief is needed in every way possible, especially with high inflation, not just gases, but everything else. And how do we approach that, or how do we address that? Take into consideration, we just had to put $118 billion when we did the bipartisan infrastructure bill into the Highway Trust Fund. $118 billion hole we had to fill because we couldn't raise any taxes then. All we tried to do was do the EV. Electric vehicles pay nothing. So persons using the roads and bridges and everything we have pay nothing. Don't you think proportionally they should be paying? We think that's fair. And we couldn't get that done because they didn't want to do that either. And now to do that and put another hole into the budget is something that's very concerning to me. And people need to understand that 18 cents is not going to be straight across the board. It never has been. That you'll see an 18 cents exactly, penny for penny, come off of that price. So I have great concern. I'm willing to listen and talk to everybody, but these are my concerns right now before I go and vote one way or the other. My other would be the political ramification. It goes off at the end of September. Which politician up here is going to be voting to put that 18-cent tax back on a month before the November election? So that we just dig the hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And we have an infrastructure bill for the first time in 30 years that we can start fixing roads and bridges. But electric vehicles have to pay proportionally also as they use the same roadways and vehicles. They're not. They're paying nothing. So we need a lot of adjustments made.
So bottom line, you have concerns. It doesn't sound like you're on board with this.
I'm not a yes right now, that's for sure.
Senator Joe Manchin is once again right on the money. You know, all these reductive leftist activist types, their only argument all the time is that Senator Joe Manchin is just a corrupt rich guy, a politician who's bought and controlled by big oil. But none of these lefties ever actually listen to what Senator Joe Manchin is saying. He's right. And the suspension of the federal gas tax right now, if anything in the long run, would cause more problems than anything. If you create some political messaging campaign that gas is going to get cheaper and then it does by a little bit, well then what do you think is going to happen? People are going to start filling up their tanks like crazy. Demand increases, gas gets more expensive. And like I stated in the past video where I talked about this, because of the increased demand, the price of gas is probably going to go right back to where it was. All you accomplished is a frenzy buying period that brings you right back to square one. And the Biden regime is trying to pretend as if this is an actual actual solution, but what it really is economically illiterate. And actually, speaking of economically illiterate, and also probably just illiterate, take a look at this little exchange with Karine Jean-Pierre and a host from ABC's The View.
But even some Democrats are against that plan, and the Congressional Research Service estimate it would save the typical U.S. family only about $13 a month. Now, I know any little bit helps, but is this the only lever the president has left to pull right now? Are there other plans in motion to get immediate relief to families that are struggling to keep up with rising prices?
And, you said something Sarah, that's so important. Anything helps. So what the president did yesterday and announced was something that he believed was straightforward and simple, is to suspend the federal gas tax and give that gas tax holiday to the American people. Right now, American people need relief at the pump. And this is for 3 months, 90 days that we're asking, while we're seeing this uptake of folks driving wherever they need to this summer.
I swear Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are no longer the most incoherent people at the White House. Karine Jean-Pierre is very quickly coming for that title. That stat that she mentioned at the start of that clip is accurate. The federal gas tax is insignificant. Even CBS News can admit that. Why cutting the federal gas tax might not help drivers much. The TLDR here is that the federal gas tax isn't even really significant at all, and preliminary data is telling us that it would amount to a savings of $13 a month. The Congressional Research Service has estimated that if no federal gas tax had been in place in 2020, a typical U.S. family would have saved $163 over the year, or $13 per month. And even if we put it on the high end, alright, $20 a month, that doesn't really affect anyone. And in the places where you're seeing the highest gas prices, places like California, for instance, where, by the way, even in California, people aren't buying Joe Biden's gas tax cut.
This is going to cost me $175 to fill up my pickup truck. I would say that I doubt if he'll do anything, and he doesn't care about us.
Well, the gas price insanity that you see in California is not because of the federal gas tax, it's the California state gas tax, which is highest in the nation, and which, by the way, the California government just signed and approved a gas tax hike. It's another monumental miscalculation and backfire from the Biden regime that's going to do two things. Firstly, more and more Americans are going to continue to wake up and realize that the Brandon regime is not serious about solving problems and that they don't actually care, but they would rather play these political games with these ridiculous gas gimmicks instead of address the problem at the core and make concrete changes when it comes to real energy policy. And the second major backfire is that Joe Biden is going to get his behind handed to him once again in the legislative process. If this hits the floor, it's not passing. And if Joe Biden's agenda fails again in the Senate, and it's once again Senator Joe Manchin, possibly Kyrsten Sinema, and maybe even other Democrats that rebuke and stop his legislation, well then he's gonna look like even more of a lame duck than he already is, like more of a legislative failure with his party in full control over the federal government, and that's going to backfire hard. Look, one of the biggest problems that Joe Biden has right now is not independents, Latino voters, suburban voters, or Republican voters. It's Democrat voters. Democrat voter enthusiasm is in the gutter.
Actually, they're more engaged so far in the primary. So this is 2022 primary turnout compared to 2018. Overall, look at this. We're up 12%. We're up 12%. Among Democrats, I will point out that we're down, but just 3%. But this is primarily being driven by Republican primary turnout. Look at this number. Up 29%. Whenever you see a rise like that, you know something's cooking. And here what is cooking is Republicans are really engaged. And overall, that has made the electorate also more engaged.
These are actual people showing up at actual polls to vote in actual primaries.
Yeah. Democrat enthusiasm is in the gutter because Joe Biden is a legislative failure, a lame duck. He's accomplished nothing, but he's made people's lives a whole lot worse. That right now is what is hurting this president more than anything else. And if he tries this little gas tax gimmick here, and it gets smacked down by Joe Manchin once again, even if this whole gas tax thing is rather insignificant, the headlines and the feeling and the sentiment is is going to be real significant. Oh, and not to mention all the press coverage, Joe Biden is getting hammered, and I mean absolutely hammered, on this issue and others, even in the left-wing media.
Biden has called it a Putin price hike, but most Americans aren't buying it. And the fact is, gas prices were on the rise before Russia invaded Ukraine. The national average is now $4.22 a gallon. That's up 60 cents since the war began, but up $1.34 from a year ago. But Biden is now at new lows, his overall approval rating at 36% in a new Quinnipiac poll. Just 1 in 3 approve of how he is handling the economy.
And consumer prices went up by 7.5% year over year in January, before the invasion began, and that was the fastest pace since February of 1982. It's gotten worse since then because we've seen prices for gasoline, natural gas go up. We've seen food prices go up. And so inflation was a big problem. It's gotten even bigger. Clearly, the White House is searching for solutions here. But let's sum up what we just heard, right? 1, not likely to get through Congress. 2, if it gets through Congress, it's going to have a minimal impact on your wallet, right? What did we say? $2.70 every time you fill up your tank. Not a big mover. And then also it could backfire by making demand worse. It's not going to address supply. It doesn't help the revenue situation. There's a lot of drawbacks there.
It's the perfect storm, folks. The perfect storm for a Republican blowout midterm victory. You gotta love it. That's what I got for you, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.